Orange22. So I was on C-SPAN this morning. Don't worry, I'm not making this a political channel. But, I may start getting more involved in politics. And if the men's rights movement is going to be a factor in society and politics today, you do have to kind of get involved in politics a little bit more. On this call to C-SPAN this morning, I do come across more as a Republican. But just a reminder, I consider myself moderate and independent. So this is not a right-wing channel or left-wing channel. But I do think the Republicans are right on this one. We're talking about voter ID laws and election fraud and whatnot. So here's my call. I was on C-SPAN this morning, the Washington Journal. It is January 12th, talking about voting laws and voter fraud and the filibuster. Thank you, C-SPAN, for having me on. You guys have a great show. I didn't get all of my ideas in because I didn't want to hog time, but let's take a look.
And we're about to break the rules to change the rules.
Here's me.
Then Senator Biden in 2005. Yesterday, President Biden in Georgia backed the idea of changing Senate rules, the filibuster for voting rights legislation. What do you think should be done? Thomas in Delray Beach, Florida, Republican. We'll go to you, Thomas.
Hi, thanks for having me on. You have a great show. A couple of things to say, a few things actually. I'm going to talk, and feel free to cut me off when you want to, no hard feelings. To make it simple on the filibuster issue, I think it's a rather silly thing to have. I think if you don't have anything pertinent or relevant to say, then you shouldn't be able to, in theory, go to the podium in the Senate and read an apple pie recipe, which is in fact theoretically possible, and that's in fact happened before. But I do find the Democratic rhetoric on the attack on democracy from Republicans very hypocritical when you consider several things. First of all, did the Democrats not try and undo a democratically held election by trying to impeach Trump in 2018 on the Russia collusion lie? And we now know the Russian collusion myth was just that. The Mueller report was emphatically clear. He did not find evidence to press charges for collusion against Trump. And the Democrats knew the evidence was faulty going into the investigation, but they did so anyway. I also find one of your callers a couple calls ago saying how the right only exists with conflict. I think it's the other way around. I think the Democratic Party is being so, and Republicans are not innocent, but Democrats are definitely worse right now, are so willingly to incite people's fears about our democracy under attack, and Republicans are trying to subvert justice and democracy. It just feels like it's very much one-sided, or at least not one-sided, but more on one side than the other. Now, my proposal, how would I fix voting issues in the U.S.? I think it should be federalized. I think it should be nationalized. I think there should be a national standard. I think it's absolutely ridiculous how different states have different laws for voting for a federal election. I do support voter IDs, but I understand people might say, well, voter ID laws are unfair to those who can't maybe afford an ID or they're economically disadvantaged. That's true. So make IDs free. Make a national ID free to all U.S. citizens. Make the process strictly regulated but easily accessible. And that would be my solution.
All right, Thomas. Thomas in Delray Beach, Florida, Republican.
There you go. And I do call on the Republican line, but again, at heart, I do feel more moderate or independent. I'm not someone who is partisan. I have voted for Republicans and Democrats in the past. I've worked for Republicans and Democrats in the past. My mind is definitely open to voting Democratic. I did vote for some Democratic candidates in 2020. So I just call on the Republican line. It's kind of a counterbalance to some of the Democratic calls. And I suppose on this particular issue, I feel more Republican. But there you go.